Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder aboard an actual living legend, the USS Iowa in her 1945 configuration, so World War II configuration. She's in the US tech tree, battle rating 8.7, and in the tech tree she comes in the mid column after the USS Tennessee, which herself is at 7.7. She's the only rank 7 ship so far for the US, and she's a massive improvement over all the other US capital ships, minus maybe the USS Alaska, which sits at 7.3. She's a beauty, she's powerful, she has some decent armor, and I've never been detonated, but she's not invincible, and you can relatively easily give her a mission kill so that she basically cannot fire back ever. And we'll talk about this in depth. Before I talk about the USS Iowa in this first impressions video, which I'll do about every new battleship that has arrived in this patch, a quick reminder. First of all, big thank you for all the participants so far on my Discord, to which you will find the link in the video description down below, for giving me suggestions how to improve my videos, what video style you prefer, and also what you want, what kind of decals you want to see in the game, because I try to get into the content partnership program with Gaijin, and to be a partner with Gaijin after all those years. I think it's more than time, and the feedback so far was really good, and I'd love to see more participation in there. I haven't seen an entry for a decal from the community so far, but maybe that's still something to come to the server. Again, link in the video description down below to my Discord. I'd really love to see you guys there. So finally, let's talk about the USS Iowa. And first let's talk about the armor, and that's a bit difficult to really get down to, because there is over the belt armor a 38mm hull plating, and behind this you can just see at the tip of the citadel a 307mm plating, so roughly 12 inches, and it is inclined inwards so that plunging fire hits the plate at an even steeper angle, and that helps the actual effectiveness of the armor. And it's an all or nothing armor scheme aside from the rear. On the rear we have thicker plating up to 342 or 43mm of belt armor, and that is what, 13.5 inches if I'm not mistaken. The bulkheads are front and aft the same with 287mm. That's not particularly thick, it's not weak either, especially if you angle the ship appropriately. And then we talk about the deck plating, and the deck plating is quite something, if I dare to say, but it's weird where it sits. So it's 152mm, so roughly 6 inches thick, and it is not on the waterline, it's above. And on the waterline we see significantly thinner, just splinter catching 1 inch or 25mm plating. In the middle over the machinery it's even thinner with half an inch to 15mm. And so if you just penetrate the belt and you have a huge charge, in theory you can splinter through the splinter protection or splash through it and ignite the magazines. In theory, hasn't happened to me so far, and I've been shot by some nasty guns. On the other hand, we have the barbettes, and they are really thick from the side, 439mm. That is quite something. Then they get a bit thinner to the front and aft direction, and that is quite something. The inner ring behind the belt armor is thinner with only 3 inches or 76mm, but it often is good enough. But that's a potential weakness for another reason. And then we come to the turret faces, which are just also quite massive, 432mm, also at an angle of 35 degrees, so the effective thickness is above 500. And behind this there is yeah, some shrapnel absorbing 63.5mm plating as well. So unless you hit the guns directly, you have very often a hard time to knock out the turrets. Now then we come to the internals of the ship, and yeah, the magazines are buried way deep below, also additionally being protected by massive fuel tanks, you know, for first penetration. That gives additional protection. Afterwards it vanishes. And yeah, the magazines, the propellant charges, shall I say, are buried deep below the waterline. The problem is that the shell hoists are full of shells, and they count also as magazine. And when they get hit, you have a magazine detonation, but it's actually only the warheads going off, and they are not that massive compared to the explosion that would result from a propellant magazine hit, right? The problem is that when the shells get hit, they detonate, you have crew loss, you have damage and so forth, but also your propellant charges vanishes, and you are left with no ammunition. This can be the case for each individual turret. So if you just knock out the first two turrets with those shell room detonations, the two front turrets cannot fire anymore. So if you hit the lower end, if you hit the barbette at all and penetrate it, that's not really causing to that, yeah, smaller magazine detonation, shall I call it. So what else about the ship? Well, first of all, she's beautiful and fast, 60 kilometers per hour. So on big maps you're actually going to places. Then we have an anti-torpedo protection system rated at 250 kilograms, although this time I got hit by a torpedo from Gneisenau. It hit on the rear magazine and I exploded. So effectively it's not that effective, right? And that absolutely was a constructional flaw when especially the front turrets, the magazines are very close to the hull, so torpedoes are an absolute danger to you. Again, that's a one-off statistic or a one-point statistic, so it's not really that effective at meaningful interpretation, but here we are. Then we have to come to the AA, and this is probably the most effective World War II anti-aircraft array you can think of. You have radar, although I did not manage so far to track anything with the radar as in previous patches. I still have to look into it. Then you have 10 twin 5-inch 38s, and you know, the hailstorm of proximity fuse shells coming at an aircraft. They might not be the fastest with the muster velocity, and they take their time at range, but the hailstorm to go through is massive. And then we have 19 quadruple 40mm Bofors. That's a rainbow of death, and that is also supplied by also 52 single 20mm. So the hailstorm is quite literally there. The radar very often just functions as a warning system, and overall aircraft have not been a problem so far. I'm not quite sure about the restrictions Gachin put on there, because in theory you can be targeted by GBUs, but this has not happened to me in any of the matches I played so far in this patch. And I haven't heard from anybody else getting targeted like this, but let me know in the comment section what your experiences with aircraft so far are in War Thunder. But now we obviously have to talk about the guns, the main artillery, and here we come to the 3 triple turrets of the 16-inch-50 Mark 7 cannons, 1170 rounds of ammunition, and you have 2 shell types. You have the 406mm Mark 13 high capacity round, the high explosive standard, with the nose fuse. Muzzle velocity is 820 meters per second, which is quite okay. And you have a TNT bursting charge of 68 kilograms, and it's an HE shell, so it does the job. If you hit the cruiser, a lot of tears are coming out of the captain's eyes. And other than this, yeah, I prefer the AP. And what an AP it is. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the 16-inch Mark 8 Mod 6 AP CBC round, the super heavy US AP. mass velocity drops to an only 762 meters per second. The TNT equivalent bursting charge is not that massive with 18.18 kilograms, but the shell weight is 1,225 kilograms. Just to give you a few numbers here, the Yamato shells is still less than 1.5 tons, just short of it, and that's an 18.1 inch shell. Then you have from the 16.1 inch shells from the Japanese 1,000 kilograms flat, so you have 20% more shell weight. And also from the Sovietsky Soyuz, the shell is 10% lighter with roughly 1,100 kilograms. And that means you have quite a lot of penetration. You have here 857 millimeters at 1 kilometer. That is the third highest penetration after the Roma with its ridiculous 15-inch shell and the Yamato with 870 millimeters. At 10 kilometers, you have 667 millimeters, which is still third, closely followed by the Sovietsky Soyuz, and at 15 kilometers, 572 millimeters. And you also have really great values at 10 kilometers range, at 60 degrees angles of attack with 243 millimeters. And there, the values between the Yamato, USS Iowa, Sovietsky Soyuz, and Roma are very close together. Compared to the Sovietsky Soyuz on Roma, it is literally 1 or 2 millimeters. The bursting charge is, not as ridiculously light as on the Roma with its 10.1, but you are far off from the Yamato with its 25 and the Sovietsky Soyuz with its nearly 40 kilograms. The reload is nice though, with 29.9, giving you a DPM of 18 rounds per minute, which is on the better end of DPMs. Obviously you do not reach the DPM values of certain German ships, but it's super heavy AP. It takes some time to be loaded. And that just means the following: this ship is really, really good. It is not super OP. We will have a video of that sort in the future, but it does the job. It is reliable, it is good, it is fun to play, and I don't have this Yamato fear, where you have all this armor and all those massive guns, and yet you have to fear basically every ship because everybody knows the weakness of the Yamato. You do not have the same kind of weakness on the Iowa. The thing is, while the Yamato dies a really fast death, right, when it gets detonated and then it's done, with the Iowa, when you receive 1 or 2 hits to your shell rooms, that also kills the fun. It has happened to me, but it hasn't happened to me that often. Maybe the armor is so efficient. Maybe the enemies were mostly really unlucky in not hitting that precise spot, because you need to hit the shells directly. It's not with splinters, it's not with blast. You need to hit the shells in the shell room directly. And so it is, dare I say, a calculated risk. So I have not died from a magazine explosion myself, but the problem is also that the hull overall of, I think, a lot of battleships is really fragile in overall health bar damage, if that makes sense. You can see here on the middle left screen the hull sections, and you can get 3 sections black and still be afloat. But then when you receive a 4th section that is black, you just slowly but surely drown, just like the Titanic. And that is just something that a lot of ships have as a problem, and it's not very specific to the Iowa. And I have not fully understood the way how this works, because sometimes I receive a lot of incoming fire of heavy artillery, of light artillery, and I barely take damage even to the hull sections. and other times I just barely get scratched by secondaries from bots, and I just take quite a bit of meaningful hull damage, and I begin to sink with 70-80% crew. That has not happened to me very often either, but when it happens, it's, dare I say, quite demoralizing. Yeah, overall, the USS Iowa, I think Gaijin has given us an opportunity to see ships of the Iowa class with other modifications post-Korea War, with missiles and, you know, reduced AA capabilities, or different AA capabilities, dare I say, with better radar and so forth, you know, because those ships served till 1980? I don't know. Maybe there was another reactivation. I'm not so far into the history of the Iowa ships because everybody else is, so forgive me. But honestly, this is a solid performer. Now, the scene here, right, that you can see on screen takes up the rest of the video. And that is quite the entrance for the next candidate that I will play. A ship that on paper is relatively similar, the Sovietsky Soyuz. It also has 16-inch guns. It also has 9 of them. The reload is a touch faster by about 1.3 seconds. And the penetration with the AP is a touch less than on the USS Iowa. But the armor of this behemoth is just an absolute joke. If you angle it in, it is an absolute pain to take down. And as you can see, we are roughly 15 minutes into the video when this scene began. And yeah, a good portion of my team will target this guy at range when it's angled, and at shorter range when he's unangled. And yes, we will drown this guy. We will take him down. But it's an absolute joke that on many occasions it takes roughly 10 minutes to do so. That is not fun. That's the thing that should not be. This is boring. And in return, it's not like it's equipped with light guns. Those are seriously dangerous guns. So this is something that I have to mention. I have no problem dealing with Bismarcks, which in a 1 versus 1 are surprisingly dangerous in the way that they, you know, just don't want to die. At shorter ranges, they are dangerous because then their guns can penetrate my barbette and my hull. And at longer ranges, you know, they out DPM me, and if I lose one turret, the difference gets even more, and you cannot mission kill a Bismarck the same way that they can you. But still, you can deal massive chunk damage to them, which is something that I kind of like, you know, there's some sort of balance. And honestly, in this patch so far, if you allow me to make a little bit of first impressions of the patch entirely, what Gaijin has done right, in a way, is to bring in all the big names for all the naval nations. And so you see a lot of variety on the battlefields. I see French players, I see Italian players, not that often. And obviously you see a lot of Yamatos, a lot of Iowas, and a lot of Bismarcks floating around. And that is absolutely great. Yes, you see here and there also lower BR players, but the majority of players right now, and I know that they have bought their way up to, or a good portion will have bought up their way to their desired battle rating or top ships. But still, there's some variety. Also, what I kind of like, and was to be expected with the hype of those big names, is the queue times. Well, they are not zero, are they? And there are still bots in the games. But the ratio is better. It's acceptable, dare I say. It's a big improvement. We'll have to see how long this hype lasts. If the community gets around to be even more active with those ships. Again, let me know in the comment section what you think about the state of the patch so far. I mean, there are always bugs that get introduced or reintroduced. There are always issues with certain balance, and you never can get it right, because if you introduce Bismarck, Richelieu, and also the Roma, alongside other ships which are just a magnitude better, dare I say, in terms of raw gun and firepower numbers, like the Yamato, Iowa, and Sovietsky Soyuz. You never can give them the same battle rating, right? But does it really make a difference? Well, it is what it is. You cannot wish for all the big names and then expect perfect balance, because there is never perfect balance. Ships like the Yamato were designed, and you can argue they failed at the design, but the initial thought process for the design was to be absolutely superior versus multiple enemies at once. And this is just not quite given. It's not game breaking, but it's hard for a lot of players. And obviously, if you then bring in ships that have 6 380mm guns as premiums for a hefty price, and then you have to fight the top dogs, which easily can obliterate you, it's not such a great time for those premium players, which then in return cannot kill some of the top dogs easily, right? Or on an equal basis. That's not meant as a complaint, but just an reflection on what's currently going on. And to be honest, I'm really looking forward to your comments. I'm really interested in your opinion and your experiences on the battlefield. And yeah, honestly, this fight has taken so long. I'll cut it down. Let's just say it continues for another like 5 minutes. I don't wanna waste your time like this, but you can see Sovietsky Soyuz. My servos are not perfect, my servos are not great, but when multiple ships have concentrated their fire on one ship at around 10 kilometers and they can continuously damage but not knock it out, you will get into a lot of troubles if there are more than one ship on the enemy's team. And this guy was actually killing our teammates. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, again, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video with as many people as you can. I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comment section, and as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.